Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. With me today is Mr. John Cameron. But before we start, we want to thank Access Sacramento for giving us this opportunity to spread our message. And we want to ask you that on this big day of giving, that if you are participating in Big Day of Giving, think about giving to Access Sacramento and free speech. Because I know our audience is appreciative of free speech, the freedom to speak, and share that with Access Sacramento and all those producers here who get to use their voice, find their voice, and spread their message.
Yep. Because there's a lot in, and I second that.
Yes,
there's an awful lot of stuff in the news and our show, the upcoming show especially, about censorship and disinformation and all the rest of that. And the key to overwhelming that is not to try to stifle speech and stifle people's opinions, and it's just to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And things like Access Sacramento do that, and so we'd appreciate it if you supported it.
Yeah. AccessSacramento.org/donate.
Yeah.
All right, so John, we're going to start out here with why are college degrees losing their value? Now, there's some basic answers from an economic perspective.
It's a 28-minute show.
Yeah, it's a 28-minute show, so we're going to have to shorten
this. So we need to do 11 shows just to go over this. Yeah. So I mean, it's like anything else. So in 1940, 4% of the population, 3% of the population had four-year college degrees, and now that's 40% of the population. So the number of college degrees has expanded by 1,000%. Is that right?
It's basic supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
The more you have something, the less value it becomes.
Well, and then also what happens is when you have the government giving you easy money to go to school, and these are so-called public schools, and nobody holds them accountable for how they spend the money, they increase the cost of the product. And if you had to pay for it out of your pocket, if you couldn't borrow money with a very low interest rate and then work in public service and get it forgiven in 10 years, which a lot of people do, you wouldn't get the degree. And it goes on and on. I can throw out statistics. I hate statistics, but I'm going to throw them out. 20% around each of people who work, is it in amusement parks, have a college degree? Something like only 17% of people, college graduates at least recently, are actually working in a related field. And now the worm has turned. An awful lot of state governments, federal governments, jobs, even Google, are taking the requirement for a college degree out of jobs. They want people to actually prove that they have the ability to do the job.
Well, because you know what they found out in programming is that what happens when they go to school, they're taught what not to do.
Yeah.
And what they actually need in places like Google is people who are thinking outside the box, not people who will stay inside their box.
Yeah.
And so what education actually does when it comes to programmers, you're actually harming people's. You got these natural programmers, and you're actually harming their long-term prospects.
Yeah, I mean, when you take lots of bong hits in the Red Bull and start programming, some people might call it hacking. You accomplish things. But when you're, as you said, staying inside the box. I mean, I met a guy who invented a programming language or a network called Ring in early 1980s that allowed Apple networks and Microsoft networks to talk to each other, and we demonstrated that product, and it was crazy. I mean, everybody said it was impossible, but he did it. He created it, and then it went nowhere because it wasn't properly marketed, and there you go. I mean, the AI, the algorithms that allow you to do that. There are programming languages now that actually write code. And if 30 years ago, if you'd have said they've been around for a while, but if you'd have said like 40 years ago when we were doing, is anybody old enough like me to remember doing punch cards and COBOL and Fortran and stuff in college? for a business degree.
Well, there might be a listener or two, but
Gail is. Gail's close enough. If you just said, you know, you can write a program that will actually write programs. Years ago, people would think you were crazy. Why is that not an early version of AI? Isn't it? Yeah.
And another thing that's kind of depressed the value of a college education, as we're going to get to here in a minute, is the oh, good Lord, it's one of those nice
politicization. I can't even say that word. Politicalization
of education.
No, really?
As education has become politicized, it's becoming less and less valuable because they're not teaching useful stuff. Turning kids into activists doesn't turn them into useful citizens.
No, propaganda doesn't teach you how to, I don't know, fix a torn spleen, for example. Yeah, and choosing which doctors go to medical school based upon DEI rather than on the smartest. I want whoever opens me up to do my next operation. It's going to happen because I've already had 7 and I play really hard. I know there's going to be an 8th and probably a 9th. I hope in 12, 13 if I live long enough. I want them not to have been admitted to medical school because of DEI, but have been admitted to medical school because they really want to keep people healthy, and when they break, fix them, and they're really, really good at it. And so we've lost that. And we've also lost the track for education. College degrees are necessary in only very few fields that they lead on to something like an engineering degree or something like that. Most of the bachelor's degrees that are useless out there are a stepping stone to a master's or a PhD before you can be actually employed. And I question the need for lots of those ologies that are out there anyway. But what we need is about 125,000 machinists in this country. We need trade schools again. We need people to know how to fix plumbing and cars and tractors.
Yeah, some of the basics we're going to get back to. But for far too long, we didn't call those good jobs. It was a good job to sit in an office all day. That was considered a good job. And now, now we're starting to rethink that.
Well, all those people that got the degree to get the good job sitting in the office are standing behind the counter making coffee.
Yeah. Well, John, we were talking about
darn good coffee.
Activists on campus, John. So we've got violent demonstrations at the pro-Palestinian encampments. And what I find interesting is how vastly different the media treats left-wing protests versus right-wing protests. I mean,
you find that?
I find it interesting,
well,
John.
Well, the media is left-wing, so what do you think they're going to do?
I just find it interesting that it's repeatedly
interesting
over and over
like
again.
A snake bite interesting, or interesting like a piece of art interesting?
Strangely, John, it's like I'm almost disinterested. Like you're sitting back as a disinterested observer going, well, that's intriguing. That they're so vastly just it's so obvious. Right? Because we've got...
Well, and this is criminal conspiracy, right?
Right.
It's obviously criminal conspiracy. Most of these people that are doing the violent acts and are occupying are not students. They're outside agitators. And if we drill down, arrested them, put them in a nice interrogation cell somewhere, waterboard, I'm not suggesting we do that. I'll volunteer, but we would find out that somebody paid them to do this. And I would like to follow the money back to who paid them to do this stuff. That's what I'd like to do.
Well, I know they're
that
paid.
Would be interesting.
I saw a video the other day. They interviewed one of these protesters at NYU, and they asked her, "So what are you here for?" And she goes, "I don't know. We were protesting down in Columbia, and now they said to come up here." And so she turned to one of her co-workers. "What are we here for? What are we mad about?" They literally didn't know why they were there. They were just following whatever direction somebody, whether they're virtue signaling or whether they're getting paid. I don't know, but they clearly have no clue why they were there.
If they are college students and they're doing that, and they don't understand that they're suppressing the same right that they're using, then they probably shouldn't be college students, because that is the dictionary definition of stupidity.
Yeah, you have every right to protest, but you don't have the right to stop other people from going about their daily business. Now, inconvenience is one thing. We get inconvenienced by all kinds of things all the time. But actually preventing, closing down campuses, preventing people from going to school, to class, preventing people from using a hall to study.
I did see a wonderful little video. There was a bunch of frat boys on campus in their little polo shirts with their gelled with their hair, with the hair product in it, who worked their way through the Palestinian protesters who pulled down the American flag, destroyed it, and put up a Palestinian flag. And they just moseyed through the crowd, because there was about 50 of them, and they were strong young men, you know, and they took down the Palestinian flag and raised the American flag and sang the national anthem. And I'm not a knee-jerk patriot, but I certainly, if anybody can find a moral compass in the people who killed, what, 1,200 Jewish folks, and then tortured and raped and beheaded and killed kids, and whether right or wrong, there's some things you just don't do. And that's the thing you don't do. And how you can glorify that, I just don't understand. And
Yeah,
it's,
I can completely understand protesting the actions of Israel, but I can't understand how you support the other side at the same time. If you're going to complain about one, you have no choice but to complain about the other, because supporting either side in this battle is a mistake.
There is one good side effect to this, and I'm not, please understand, all the thousands of viewers out there, don't hate me for this, is you're now seeing, when they show those pictures and videos of what, because we haven't seen it, they haven't shown it. They don't show it in Ukraine. What Gaza looks like hell, basically, is what city fighting looks like. That's what city fighting looks like with modern weapons. So anybody who's in favor of war, that's what it's going to look like. You know, when you have the kind of munitions that we have now, and smart weapons, and the firepower infantry units backed up by tanks and air power can put out, and they're fighting in a city, that's the kind of destruction you get. Okay. That's what it looks like, and I'm glad people are seeing it.
All right, so we're going to move on here. Again, Biden forgives more than, or is attempting to
I got
forgive
something to say about this one.
for more than $6 billion in student debt for 317 defrauded borrowers, right? So they're hanging people who are on private colleges again, were defrauded because of their education. But why doesn't the same rule apply to all these other colleges,
You
John?
beat me to the punch. They're saying that they were misled about the value of their education. All these clowns that are sitting there at Columbia University and UCLA and all the rest of that getting ology degrees, that are going to go out and find out that they can't get a job and they're $175,000 in debt, that's not misleading. And then, you know, you're gonna, as the president, do this, wave your magic wand and forgiving debt. No, don't call it that. Say passing the college debt on to people who don't go to college, who make less money than your daddy and mommy make, so they can pay it for you. That's what they should call it. And I agree, absolutely. The numbers we talked about earlier. On the first topic, why college degrees are losing their value. If only 20% of the people out there are working in their field, these are publicly educated, these aren't private art schools. And I know a lot of people that did very well from Art Institute educations.
Yeah.
They're artists, they do production in theater companies, they have their own businesses. There was value. The Art Institute had tremendous value. I mean, if you had a good portfolio from Art Institute, you could get a job with it. This is ludicrous. Yeah. But I know people that graduate from Sac State right down the street with ology degrees, not all of them, who are literally working doing landscaping. Yeah, and why didn't they get a landscaping degree?
That's the problem, right? I don't have, if borrowers were defrauded in these cases, then how come borrowers who have a worthless degree and $300,000 in debt weren't defrauded? That they can't pay back. I can't pay back my student loan. Well, then maybe you should sue your university for not giving you the education so you can pay back your student loan. Maybe you should sue the government for enticing you into borrowing the money in the first place. Well, the government's out of money, and that's actually going to bring us on to Mr. Richard Fields talking about some more spending. So let's see what Richard has to say this week. Go, Richard. We get to see him.
Hello, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. Congress approved and Joe Biden signed legislation to give an additional $61 billion to Ukraine to continue to fight our proxy war with Russia. That's in addition to the $75 billion already given. In more concrete terms, over $400 has been added to the debt obligations of every man, woman, and child in the United States. I say debt obligations because we don't have $136 billion to give away. The Fed is creating it out of thin air so the U.S. Treasury can borrow it to hand over to the Ukraine government, which has banned most opposition political parties and canceled the next election in Ukraine, because that's how we support democracy, don't you see? The token conservative Washington Post columnist George Will called the 112 Republicans who opposed the giveaway ignoble. He analogized the Moscow-Beijing-Tehran axis to the Germany-Japanese axis in World War II. Kind of reminds me of the domino theory argument that was used by our warfare state to prod us into the Vietnam War, or George W. Bush's axis of eagle argument to lure us into an attack on Iraq after 9/11, followed by war in Afghanistan. Here's a gentle reminder. Who controlled the government of Vietnam, the northern half of which was being funded by the Soviet Union and Communist China, never posed an iota of threat to the United States. Who controlled any country in the Middle East, even terrorists funded by a bunch of 12th century Muslim fundamentalists, never posed any threat to the United States. And whether the territory referred to as Ukraine is controlled by Russia, Germany, Poland, Scythia, Greece, Rome, Lithuania, the Mongol Empire, the Golden Horde, the Crimean Khanate, or other countries I may have missed, does not pose a threat to the United States. But we had to meddle anyway. In 2013, the duly elected president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, discontinued discussions to join the European Union and instead sought closer ties with Russia. The Obama administration Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland, along with the CIA, instigated the Euromaidan protests and the Revolution of Dignity, which led to the impeachment of Yanukovych. Russia responded by annexing the largely Russian portion of Crimea because they speak Russian. When Ukraine started talking about joining NATO, Russia invaded the rest of Ukraine. Without US military and another 50 billion euros in aid from Europe, the Putin annexation of Ukraine would probably already be a done deal. Instead of the non-democratic government now ruling Ukraine, the country would be ruled by a faux democratic Russia. Would that present a threat to the United States? Not in the least. It would, however, present a possibly existential threat to other countries in Europe, particularly those countries which used to be part of the Soviet Union. And Putin is enough of a megalomaniac to attempt to try to annex more territory once Ukraine is vanquished. And the odds are it will be vanquished. So there is very good reason for Europe to come to the aid of Ukraine. I'm in Norway as I speak. Scandinavia is taking the threat of a resurgent Russian empire seriously. Finland and Sweden ended years of neutrality and joined NATO. To prevail against Russia, Ukraine will need all the help it can get. American Abrams and German Leopard tanks are being destroyed by Russian drones. Russian arms production is in high gear. Over the long arc of history, Ukraine has been ruled by a multitude of other countries and empires, most of them authoritarian. Right now, whether Ukraine is controlled by homegrown authoritarian leaders or the authoritarian who rules Russia, has no effect on the security of the United States. It does have an effect on the security of neighboring non-authoritarian European countries. They should step up to the plate. But it is their fight, not America's fight. This is Richard Fields with Report from the Fields. See you again next week.
Now, you know, John.
Well-spoken, Richard.
You know, John, who has the biggest actual threat from a resurgent Soviet Union, Russia, is actually not Europe, it's China. China and Russia have a long history of antagonizing each other over that border up there. And it's a long border.
Well, I think it's the longest border, one of the longest borders on the planet. It's like 3,000 kilometers, something like that. Yeah.
And there's always underlying tensions.
I think the U.S.-Canada border is longer, but other than that, I think it might be the China-Russia border. Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, we could have theoretically become friends with China, but now, anyway, that whole, I was going to say Middle Eastern, but that's not Eastern Asia, no, Eastern Europe, Western Asia area is another one of those places that's been fought over since the beginning of time. And time again, you know, us sitting here halfway around the world, we really don't have much interest in it.
No, and when you look at China, and we're the planet's biggest busybodies. I mean, the Chinese are doing it now by lending money to people all over the planet that they can't pay back. Oh, kind of like our student loans. So they get these ports and facilities and access to minerals and all the rest of that. So they're busybodying in a different way. They're not. The Chinese government doesn't have troops in 160 different countries or whatever you say we have. We have troops in what? Germany, Italy, Poland,
Yeah, well,
Japan,
China's Belt and Road is fundamentally
Korea.
no different than how we do it.
What?
They just have, it's Belt and Road.
Yeah, Belt and Road.
Instead of soldiers, they send workers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They send
yeah.
workers over
Yeah,
there. All
yeah.
those things they build with Chinese workers.
Oh yeah.
So the local economies don't even get the education of having to build these projects. Someone else comes in and does it. So it's anyway.
Then the Chinese end up owning them for a while until the country realizes, wait a second, we don't actually have to let the Chinese be here. We're just going to nationalize it again, because the Chinese aren't going to send an army here like the U.S. If we did that to the U.S., they might bomb the crap out of us. But the Chinese, they don't do it that way. Yeah.
That is the question.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on because we're talking about bombing and targeting people. So if we've got the next one, a politically targeted. I keep forgetting it.
She
Marilyn
doesn't
Mosby.
look anything like that.
Yeah, you know, that's the magic of TV. She did a TV interview.
That's a long ago picture of her.
No, that was right from a TV interview.
Was it a recent one?
Yeah,
Oh,
she
man.
just did a TV interview.
I want
her
them
makeup
to
artist.
do my makeup. Yeah.
But anyway, she's facing 40 years. Now they're claiming she's for using her own, for pulling out her own funds from a retirement account.
This is MSN, which is, I don't know what that stands for. Socialist network, manipulative socialist network. I made that up on the spot. I love it, because CNBC is Clinton News Broadcasting. So anyway, it's not that simple. She actually committed a crime. During COVID, she pulled money out of her for a retirement account, $90,000, and said it was for hardship. It wasn't for hardship. It was to buy a house, and then she lied on the loan application for the house. So completely different from being politically targeted like the former president of the United States is being right now. It's just she actually committed a crime. Now, is it worth 40 years in jail? No, but nobody's going to give her a 40-year sentence. Should somebody commute her sentence because she's whining about being politically motivated? No, they should treat her like anybody else, just like they should treat Trump like anybody else.
Yeah, if you're okay with sending people through a legal rectal exam because of their politics, well then you can't really complain when someone does it to you, can you?
No.
And that was always the danger, right? Once you start down this path, well, the other person's solution is to do the same thing to you.
And that's one of the reasons that the Supreme Court's looking at what's going on with the president, because he, claims and 65% or 70% of the population, and not just Republicans, a lot of, like a significant fraction of the Democratic Party, believe that Donald Trump is being politically targeted with all of these trials, and we're going to get into
Well,
that.
everybody knows they're politically targeted.
Yeah. So if that can happen to a former president, then what's to prevent it from happening to every former president?
Yeah. So Don, you brought up, we're going to talk about this, the Biden conclusions on anti-Trump. So for you guys in the crew, we're going to skip a topic. So we'll go down to topic number 6. So Biden's collusion in the anti-Trump lawfare gambit, right? You want to talk about this? So.
Well, he basically a lot of the direction and help and legal advice and everything is coming directly from the Biden administration. These people who are supposedly independent prosecutors and district attorneys and everything, they're basically just pawns to the good old boy network that's propping up Biden, the puppet that he is. So the people that are operating the puppet that is Biden are also operating these people. But the White House is obviously communicating with them, not maybe Biden directly, although probably, because he believes he's above the law.
Well, what is it George Carlin said? If interests align, you don't need a conspiracy.
No.
Because they all know what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is
Did
signal
he say
when that's
that?
what you're
God,
doing.
he was a smart guy. Yeah.
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 So it's and it's obvious to any of us who are sitting out here and we look at these things that these are politically motivated. And if you're okay with that, then fine. But understand the consequences.
When the worm turns,
Yeah.
same thing's going to happen to you. You're gonna go to prison for something that isn't a crime because somebody decides it is a crime. I mean, the ridiculousness of this property thing that's going on. This lunatic judge has decided that something that everybody else valued at $200 or $300 million is worth $18 million, and therefore it's fraud. I mean, every single one of these cases is going to get thrown out on appeal at the next level, and if not at that level, at the level above it. So it is so patently and obviously lawfare. I love that word, lawfare. I don't know who invented it. It was a great word. I mean, the Dems know it, the Republicans know it, the Libertarians know it, but you got to put a stop to it, because this is what they do in banana republics. This is what they do in the Ukraine. This is what they do in the Soviet Union. And until very recently, we haven't done this here.
Yeah, and so be very careful.
Bad trend.
Be very, very careful what you approve of, even if it's been done to you, because it's just going to get worse. It's just going to accelerate over time and time again. And we're talking about accelerating. It is Big Day of Giving until midnight. So for you, go to accesssacramento.org, find the Big Day of Giving donate button, click that donate button, and help support free speech and education for middle-aged people who want to change directions of their lives. You get to come in here and you get to do that. And I want to thank Access Sacramento because, quite frankly, I would never know what it was like to be comfortable if it wasn't for this place. I spent a lifetime of an anxiety disorder, and this place, this show being here, shows to me that I can be comfortable somewhere. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the crowd. Thank you, John. Thank you for listening to me. Thanks to the crew.
Crew.
And so I said crowd, didn't I?
Crew.